All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Want to welcome you guys to the Boss Method webinar. Today, our guest is Eric Bramlett out of Austin, Texas. How are you, Eric?
I'm great, Lee. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for being on.
Thank
So,
you.
so we're going to focus today on Boss Method rule number 4, one marketing activity a week. And I think it's not so much that it is the one activity a week, it's being consistent and also measuring the results and just putting good content out there. And so really felt like Eric was a great guest for that. So Eric, why don't you give us a little background on how you got into this crazy business and what your company looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of fell in the business in 2003. Enjoyed it, enjoyed the freedom and whatnot. I got serious about it probably in 2008, 2009, whenever the first recession hit, and said, oh, wow, this isn't as easy as it used to be. Really got serious in probably 2010, 2011, started focusing on personal production quite a bit. Lead gen came pretty naturally to me, and so we took on our first agent in 2012. Fast forward to now, we're 16 agents, pretty high producing. I did 130 million last year with 11 agents, and this year, not sure where we're going to go. We were tracking to 180 before this COVID thing hit. But right now, I'm kind of stepping back towards a management role. As we've gotten bigger, those duties have definitely increased. So that's what I'm focusing on.
Cool. That's great. It's cool. You kind of have the full, I don't know if dichotomy is the right word, but you've done all those things. You've been your own agent and now grown into a business owner. So.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Cool. That's great. Cool. I'm going to do a quick poll real quick just to see who we've got on. We want to make sure this is relevant for everybody. So if you guys could just let us know real quick if you are a solo agent, a team member, or a team owner, or broker. Got some others. I always like the others. I root for the others because I feel like I'm an other. They're like, what do you do? I'm like, I just a bunch of stuff that nobody knows exists. So cool. They're all popping on there. All right, good. We have a really good cross section. I'll give just another second and then we'll share the results. All right, go ahead and share these. So it looks like we're predominantly solo agent, but certainly some team members and team leads and broker owners and my other people. So good. We'll try to keep this both high level for you guys, but also make sure we get tactical enough that there's some real takeaways. So, Eric, tell us a little bit about your marketing strategy, just overall.
So I'll go super high level. We try out a lot of things and we throw away what doesn't work and we keep what does. So we predominantly are on the web. We do some snail mail campaigns too. Do a lot of email marketing. We do, a little bit of everything. If I were to show you our close report, I think there's about 14 different lead sources that are on the close report that we look at.
Great. That's super cool. And I think we'll dig more into that later, but I love the idea of throwing away what doesn't work. How do you measure what doesn't work? Like, what's a metric to say that something is or is not working?
Yeah. So, I mean, the ultimate metric is, does it turn into money? So closings those are the ultimate metric, but closings are going to take anywhere from 3 to 6 months after the lead comes in. And you don't generally want to spend money on a marketing source for 6 months before you make a decision on whether or not it's going to work. So the next closest thing to closing are going to be viable leads. And you generally are going to see if you're getting viable leads, relatively quickly. You launch a new campaign, you should see leads within a week or two on most campaigns. There are branding campaigns that are different. Whenever you're attacking listings, branding is really important. So that's a little fuzzier to define if it's successful or not. Anyways, I won't go off on a tangent there. Leads are going to be the fastest way to determine whether or not.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I was going to take you down that tangent actually, because I dig that. I think I want to separate branding from marketing a little bit.
Yeah.
So can you speak a little bit to kind of where do you draw that line? What's just like, hey, company recognition and what's marketing for business?
Yeah. I mean, so I generally look at it. I mean, I generally look at lead gen or branding. It's funny. I used to joke that branding was what an advertising salesman told you were doing whenever something didn't look like it worked. So what branding does is you're making sure that your brand is out there and you're continuing to drive home your consistent branding message. So ours is experienced agents, phenomenal service, no pressure. That's what we try to drive home for everybody. Another one is we drive home that we're, the area expert for whichever area we're marketing. We're marketing to. Lead gen is a lot more straightforward. Lead gen is you put a message out there and people respond to it in one way or another. That can be anywhere from they register to view properties on your website, high funnel lead, all the way to people call in because they want to talk to you, low funnel, great lead. So that's lead gen. And I would encourage, it looked like we have mostly agents that are on the call right now. Don't ignore branding by any means, but don't focus on it. You need to focus on lead gen. For me, we're just now getting to a place where branding even matters for us. And I think production wise, we're probably a mid-sized brokerage in town, and we're just now starting to care about branding. For an individual agent, you spend $1,000, you need to get X number of leads out of that $1,000. So,
yeah, that's great advice. And let's go a little deeper even on kind of the solo agent, or I guess what I'd call the one-to-one, like marketing type of message. And let's,
mm-hmm.
I guess we want to break this maybe into lead gen and into nurture, because lead gen is one,
Sure.
It's one thing to obviously generate a new contact. It's another thing to do something with somebody you've already got. So let's do lead gen first. Like, do you have any
Sure.
tips around messaging, like compelling messaging?
Yeah. So I'll get Yoda on that for a second. Russell Shaw told me years ago that whatever it is that makes you unique and that's good about you, that's what you push. So if you're a single agent, you need to tell everybody why working with a single agent's way better than working with a team or a big company. If you're a team and you have support, you need to tell people why it's way better to work with a team and have support than it is to work with a single agent. If you're a boutique brokerage like we are, we'll pound home why we're way better than working with one of the big box brands. It's really what's unique about you. What are you proud of? Find those things and just market the heck out of them. And, there's a concept of an elevator pitch, right? So develop your elevator pitch first. You probably already have it. And then of that elevator pitch, figure out what the 3 most important sentences are in that pitch. And there's your marketing message at that point.
Yeah, that's great advice. And if people, I think we can probably, we'll drop a link on the recording to the session that you and I did on your, what do you guys call it? Not your North Star, but your,
the culture code?
Yeah, the culture code.
Yeah.
It's obviously a more in-depth version as you become a company, but that's great advice.
Yeah.
Is like, what do you do better than anybody else? Whether it's a niche, a certain area, whatever that is.
Yeah, for sure. And sorry to keep talking about it, but if you're talking about lead gen, you have to have what's called a call to action. So it's something actionable. The easiest thing to describe is if you're running like a radio ad, which, works for some people, doesn't work for us. You have a call to action that's call this phone number, right? So when you're talking about web marketing, what's the call to action? Do you want them to submit a web form? Do you want them to call in? Do you want them to inquire on a property? What are you trying to do with this marketing piece? And that needs to be sort of like your guiding light on that marketing effort.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'm glad you mentioned that. And I want to reiterate the same on social, right? Like when people post, you always get more engagement. You see people say like, hey, tag a friend, or would you want to live here? Right. A lot of people are just pushing out, I think, and not eliciting a response. So yeah, I love that. Do you have any other like CTA examples that you could use kind of across the board, whether it's email or website or just in general?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking for us, it's going to be either call in, chat with a live person. We're testing out text in right now, and then filling out web forms. That's generally what we do. And then, in terms of the actual CTA, get started now, call now, things like that. You test them out, you A/B test them to see which will elicit a more positive response. But generally speaking, I mean, you have to find something. You got to try a lot of things and figure out one that works. And then once you have one that works somewhat, then you go, okay, well, that's the direction I'm going to go with it. Let's improve on what's working. How can we maybe make that work a little bit better? Okay, well, this worked in this one way. Maybe let's replicate that, but do it in some other way to get more volume. Sorry, I think I maybe went off on a tangent there.
No, that's totally great. I think that's what people need, is some more like tactical, like say, people always respond to these things that like, just tell me what to say. What should I put there? What do I put in this box?
There's nothing magic, man, and it honestly changes by market. So, for example, Austin, Texas, keep Austin weird. People react really well to like a boutique message here. You go to another market that maybe has a different vibe, and that might not resonate there. So, I could tell you something that could work in Austin, and it might fall flat in whatever market you happen to be in. You want to test out tons and tons of different messaging, tons and tons of different platforms. You're going to waste a lot of time and or money on things that don't work. But actually, I'll correct myself. You didn't waste any time and you didn't waste any money because you learned. At a minimum, if you launch a campaign, we tried a specific Facebook campaign for a year and probably spent $100,000 on it. And I was convinced it was going to work. And that's why we kept on trying and spending. And it fell flat. We got nothing out of it. And, it was obviously, look, in hindsight, was that a waste? Well, kind of, but it also told me, don't do that again. So we learned like that doesn't work. I mentioned radio a little bit ago. I have friends in other markets that radio does incredibly well for. We tested it for 3 months. I generally give anything a 90-day trial. And, it was very return on investment negative. Like I think we closed maybe 3 deals out of it after spending $15,000 or something like that. And, that was something we weren't going to continue to do. So we learned, okay, in this specific market with our brand, radio doesn't work very well. So you're sort of trying a lot of things, saying, okay, well, that one didn't work. I know definitively it didn't work because I defined what my goal was with this marketing effort, didn't hit the goal. So I'm going to move on. Let's try something else. Flip side, we've had other campaigns that we've tried out. Generally speaking, it's a small percentage of them, call it 5 to 10%, that work. And they work either kind of, or they work really well. You go, oh, wow, that's amazing. Let's pound this. Let's really focus on this and maximize as much as we possibly can on this campaign that gave us some direction. So,
yeah, no, that's great. So now let's dive into the nurture side a little bit. So what messaging? So let's say you do all that, you get new people in, like we all know typically that they aren't just like, hey, I'm ready to sign a buyer rep and get in a car. So now what do you do for the nurturing type of messaging?
Yeah, so you need to build an action plan. Follow Up Boss does great for that. It depends on where they are, right? You want to visualize a sales cycle or a sales funnel, whatever you want to call it. And your folks are going to be on a buy side. People are generally, call it 3 to 6 months away from actually buying something, and they're going to be depending on where you pick them up in their purchase decision. They might be close to deciding which agent they want to work with, or they might be far away from it. If you mean like how to nurture leads, what we visualize is we've never talked to this person ever in the past. And then all of a sudden we have some sort of digital communication with them. Well, the goal of any digital communication needs to be to get them on the phone. You as a salesperson need to build rapport, and that's not impossible to do over email, but it's very difficult to do over email. So you have to prove value over email to that person, and you want to get them on the phone. The goal, once they're on the phone, is to meet them in person. Once you've met somebody in person and you've proven value to them face to face, and they know that you're working for them, you have established an agency relationship with them more than likely. Our shop, we don't do buyer rep agreements. We just don't. My personal opinion is that they cause more friction than they reduce, but that doesn't mean that they're bad. But we know that once we've met somebody face to face, there is a high likelihood that they are going to buy a house from us if they buy a house. So that's why we visualize, okay, never met them, only communicated by email. Let's get them on the phone. Okay, now we have them on the phone. Now let's meet them in person. Changes a little bit during COVID because we are working with a number of sellers right now that we've never met in person, but we didn't just send them a link to our sales docs. We did a Zoom call with them, and we did a PowerPoint presentation, which is the next best thing to meeting somebody in person.
Right. Yeah, that's great. And I think something that's honestly been prevalent through all of these Boss Method webinars, and quite frankly, the COVID interviews that we did, yourself included, is just being intentional, having the plan, having those things, and having, Follow Up Boss specific. Like I love what you just said. If you're using the right stages, or using stages well in Follow Up Boss, you've got some indication of that, right? If they're sitting in lead, then in theory, hopefully you just haven't forgotten to move them. Hopefully that's a different message than people that are in nurture or sphere or wherever. And so just having some delineation and being intentional around the messaging for the right group, you know?
Absolutely. And I mean, and having something actionable for yourself to do, you know, if you, what, you know, we all work for ourselves, no matter if you're a single agent or if you own a business or whatnot. If you're a single agent, you do own a business, but what do you do? It's Monday morning. Well, you should time block, and you should know that at some point during the week, you're going to go follow up with leads. And if you have them organized well, then you know who you need to call. You know, we have 25, 30,000 people in our database. So if you just open it up and try to figure out what to do, you'd be completely lost. But if you have them in correct stages and you have them tagged correctly, you can really sort of segment off what you need to do that day and batch it.
Yeah. And speaking of, do you guys use any sort of what I would just call behavioral type stuff to follow up? Like, are you following up with clicks and opens? Or are you following up with people that have been back on your website? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we're a little different in that our marketing generates some pretty low funnel leads. So whenever, by the time we've talked to somebody, they're pretty engaged. So we don't actually do that. I'm very familiar with the technique. I think it's phenomenal to be able to watch what people are doing online. I do a lot of stuff in terms of marketing with people that haven't yet contacted us. We continue to market to them and encourage them to call in. All that said, you know, single agent, yeah, absolutely. Like anybody that you have in your database, you can see what they're doing and they're online looking at stuff. There's zero reason you shouldn't reach out to them. We talked about marketing versus branding, or I'm sorry, lead. It's all marketing, but we talked about lead gen versus branding. Well, there's a third marketing activity, prospecting, right? And that's very different than lead gen in terms of like marketing lead gen. That's as simple as you're at the grocery store and you hit somebody up. You strike up a conversation with somebody about real estate. That's prospecting, right? And generally speaking, any person in any type of business either has a lot of money or they have a lot of time, one of the two. Pretty inverse, right? When you got a lot of time, you usually don't have a lot of money. And when you have a lot of money, you usually don't have a lot of time. So if you're at the point where you have a lot of time right now, I would encourage you to focus on prospecting in order to get as many people into your database that way as you possibly can. That's like using elbow grease basically to get your business going.
Yeah, that's really smart. I like the thing I really like about you, and I've known this about you, but I think you've got these things delineated. The goal is to get a phone call. So whatever
Right.
stuff you do to help you get a phone call, figure out that stuff. But it's not like this crazy list of like, you must do this, then this, then this, then this. It's like goal, get a phone call. Goal, get more people in the database, you know, like, and I hope people can see that and kind of relate to that in the sense that, you know, if your goal is to get more people in the database, that's great. You should be clear that that's the goal. If your goal is to have more conversations, then you should be clear about that and track those.
Right.
Do you encourage your agents specifically? Let's go back to time blocking for a second. Do you encourage your agents are there any specific time blocking or techniques for making time to do all this?
I mean, just the concept of time blocking in general, you know, we don't micromanage our agents at all. Same way that, you know, I'm real goal oriented. We're real goal focused with the agents, and whenever they have a certain conversion rate, whenever they're closing deals, we don't really try to, you know, fix what's not broken. That said, we do talk about time blocking a whole lot. And that's as simple as, you know, what are the important things you're going to do this week? Okay, great. When are you going to do them? And stick to that schedule. As a single agent, that schedule has to be fluid because, you know, the most important thing you can do is to get out and meet people and sell a house. So if you have Monday morning, I like Monday morning a whole lot because that's like a time that a lot of people don't go view houses. So if you have an important task to do, it's probably your most valuable block of time. But that said, you know, if you blocked off Monday morning to follow up with all of your leads, and somebody wants to go view a house on Monday morning, you go show them that freaking house, right? And then move that block of time to either the afternoon or the following morning. The only thing we talk about a whole bunch, because I'm kind of obsessed with it, is just email batching, which is a whole different conversation about email versus.
No, and I was ready to go there. I was ready to go there because I think that's probably why most people have tuned in. They know they know that's kind of your thing. So tell us. Yeah. I was gonna tee it up by asking you what's the one thing you would do if you could do one thing, knowing that was the answer.
Yeah. Oh, you're talking about the batch. The batch emails is actually different than what I was talking about. Email batching. Email batching is it's a Tim Ferriss thing, but yeah, but batch emails, right? So absolutely, like send out newsletters to your database of with relevant information.
Yeah,
And
what can you tell us your
okay,
overarching strategy for the email marketing? And
yeah,
then we'll
look,
dig into that.
sure, look smart. That's the overarching strategy, right? Like make sure that what you're sending out positions you as an expert in your specific market. Don't send garbage. Don't, if it smells like something that's not valuable, it's probably not valuable. So our litmus, like we generally, but pre-COVID, we sent out one email a month to the existing database, and that was a market update, and the market hadn't changed significantly in 10 years. We were very fortunate. The market, since we recovered from the recession in, call it 2011, and it had been in a trajectory upwards since that time. So every month it was simply, here are the high level stats. Here are a handful of stories that we thought were important. By the way, the high level statistics are not applicable to you because you're in a submarket. So if you're interested in what your submarket is doing, then please contact us and let us know how we can help you understand your submarket. And those were very formulaic, and they were short, very easy to read, a lot of bullet points. COVID hit, and all of a sudden, oh my God, the only good thing that came out of it is all this interesting content. So everybody all of a sudden wanted to know, what do we do when the sky is falling? And so we sent out a single email, and it was incredibly well received. The reason why it was well received is because we didn't sugarcoat anything. We said, yeah, we're going into a recession. Whenever there were some people that were cheerleaders saying, oh, it's not going to happen, well, it was obvious to anybody with the brain that we're going into a recession. So we talked about that. We talked about the different possibilities that could happen. We sent another email that talked about, what specifically do you do if you're a buyer? What do you do if you're a seller? We didn't say, oh, everybody should buy. Oh, everybody should sell. We said, well, it's not a terrible time if you fit these criteria to sell. We said, if you're a brave buyer, you might want to go buy. So we were just really honest, and we sent those out, and we've had a really good, really strong response to them. Every time we send them out, we get people that email us back. It's tough to quantify because I think that these emails are more branding than they are lead gen. But I will tell you this, we've anecdotally heard from lots of people that we haven't heard from in years. And they've specifically mentioned, like, oh yeah, your content's been great. So
That's great. I see that a lot too. I had that personally when I was in the business too, where people would respond, or with follow-up boss strips, where they'd respond years later and say, oh, thanks for all your emails. We just, we didn't need anything until now.
yeah, absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
wild. So tell us a little bit about, if you can, some of the, like, do you drive them to your website? Do you ask for a reply? Like what's the content of that email?
Yeah. So most of them are simply, here we are, we look smart, remember who we are. We do have some COVID specific resources on the website that we always include, and you can obviously track who's clicking on that. But since this is more of a branding effort, there's not a strong call to action with these emails. Literally the goal of these emails is for people to open them and for them not to unsubscribe. So when I look at this, I go, okay, what's the open rate? What's the unsubscribe rate? What's our reputation score? So I want the reputation score to remain high. I want the open rate to be as high as possible, and I want the unsubscribe rate to be as low as possible. Those are the goals.
That's awesome. And so that is Follow-Up Boss with SendGrid, is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you send through Follow-Up Boss, just using SendGrid as the architecture? You don't use a template in SendGrid, right? It's through Follow-Up Boss.
No. So yeah, for sure. And that was, so I was lucky enough to pay attention whenever you guys said, like, hey, look, you can send your email newsletters through Follow-Up Boss now. And the only trade-off was that you couldn't send what I would consider highly stylized emails. I'm fine with that. I think that, personally, if I see a styled email, I generally delete it. Okay, that's canned. That's something that's not to me specifically. We're seeing some confirmation that other people feel the same way. So we don't use a highly stylized email. We do something pretty conversational. We use a lot of bullet points, and we use minimal pictures that we embed in it. The big reason why we were with MailChimp for years, and the big reason why we moved over to Follow-Up Boss was Dan actually told me offline. He said, If you send through Follow Up Boss, you're going to show up in the inbox. You're sending through MailChimp right now, you're going to show up in the promotions tab. Okay, cool. I never look at my promotions tab. I'm sure most people are the same way. It's not quite spam, but it's almost. And so as soon as we moved over, the first newsletter, which this is back with the old, kind of formulaic, just monthly update newsletter, our open rate doubled. So that was pretty obvious that was a very, very, good thing to do. The tool works incredibly well. So
yeah, that's great. Can you dive a little deeper into how that's set up? I know some people have some confusion around authenticating the domain. I mean, we don't have to go into heavy detail, but like, what does one need to do to go from not having SendGrid to getting it working?
I can't tell you step by step, but it was pretty easy. You basically sign up for SendGrid. It's the $15 a month account until you start sending more messages. Then I think we're spending 30 or 40 now. Not the expensive one. You don't want the MailChimp competitor. You just want the basic $15 essential plan. And then you go to your back end and Follow Up Boss. You do whatever integration you need to. I can't remember. I'm sorry. It was literally like just go to your back end and Follow Up Boss after you signed up for SendGrid.
Yeah, it's pretty straight ahead. Do you recall if you had to authenticate your domain though? That's probably the biggest.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, so I did do that. And you don't have to authenticate your domain. It's going to improve your deliverability and it's going to improve your reputation. Don't do that to start though. To start, literally sign up for SendGrid, hook SendGrid into Follow Up Boss. Whenever you go to, okay, so that's going to get you like 90% there, call it. And that if you do nothing from there, you've already improved your life by just doing that. Then to improve your reputation and your deliverability, you have to know how to monkey around with your DNS. And so you have to create, I think it's a couple MX or one MX record. That's something that I'm familiar with, so it wasn't very difficult. But yeah, I mean, if you have problems with that, I mean, I would call my registrar or whoever's managing your DNS and get that. But just know that that's not like sandbagging you if you haven't done that. If you've done everything else, you're still totally fine. So
that's great. No, that's good advice. And I honestly didn't know that because I went in, just being nerdy myself, went in and wanted to authenticate initially when I set it up.
Yeah.
And so that's great advice. If you don't even have to do that up front, just get to using it.
What you're doing whenever you authenticate the domain is that you're saying, okay, I've told SendGrid that I'm using, BramlettResidential.com, right? Now, if I were a spammer, I could go in and use whatever domain I wanted to, but by authenticating it, by showing that you actually have control to the DNS, SendGrid and the other email providers go, oh yeah, this is authentic, right? And so they improve your deliverability at that point. But again, that is, you have a great knife. Whenever you have used SendGrid and Follow Up Boss, you are sharpening that knife by authenticating the domain. So
that's great. That's super cool. So yeah, so I guess we break this into a couple of pieces. There's what I tend to just call the architecture, which in this case is Follow Up Boss and SendGrid. That's the actual engine that delivers. Who is it going to? What is the content, and pressing send. Then there's the content of it, obviously. And then on another level, I guess, the reporting or the integration or whatever, doing something with the data. So I guess we covered the architecture, covered content a bit before. We may go into some more specifics. As far as the reporting on all that, can you tell us more about that or share maybe what you look for?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you're looking at, okay, at overall, you need to know that your reputation is good, right? So whenever you, like, I see people on Facebook all the time, they're like, oh, I'm going to spam, I don't know why. Well, you're guessing if you don't have your reputation score. So whenever you integrate SendGrid, now all of a sudden you can see what your reputation is. So ours, I'll brag for a sec, ours is 99%. So we're 1% off of perfect for our reputation. And I want to keep it there. We've been down as far as 95, which is still an A. But that's your overall, that shows you from a very high level, are you able to send email without going to spam? And SendGrid will measure that for you. Then you want to look at what your open rate is, and that's going to be entirely based on your subject line and if you're delivering. I mean, if you're not delivering, if you're on a spam, your open rate's going to be garbage no matter what, but that would be a problem with your reputation. Anyway, so for the most, let's just assume your reputation's good. Your subject line is going to dictate how good of an open rate you have. And then your content is going to dictate how good of an unsubscribe rate you have. So whenever you're sending, I mean, unless you have another motive, which is to get somebody to click on a link, that's about all you can do with email or have them call. Your only goal is to make sure people don't unsubscribe, that they read it, and that people open it. There's another interesting thing you can sort of extrapolate from that. You'll have unique open rate, which shows the number of unique people that you sent to that opened. And then you'll also have open rate. So what's really kind of cool and fun is that if you have a piece that really resonates, we had one piece that had a 200% open rate. And what that meant was that people were forwarding that on, and then it was showing opens because it was being forwarded around. So your overall open rate is going to show you like how compelling your content was if it starts going really, really high. Does that all make sense? I know it can be kind of confusing.
Yeah, I think it totally makes sense. I'll kind of, I guess, reword it if that helps some people. Like, the idea is, obviously, we kind of went through this with Albert in his conversations. It was like they may have tried a bunch of, like, they may have talked to 30 people or tried to talk to 30 people, but a conversation being more than 2 minutes was what's considered an actual conversation. So in this case, it's similar in that, the open rate is one thing. The open rate can't be more than 100%, right? You can't have more opens than people.
Unique open rate can't, but then open rate can be higher. Exactly.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thank you for that, because I want to get it right to not confuse people. Yeah. So I think were you comfortable sharing some of that? I think you were.
Some of the content.
Yeah, or maybe not the content, but just showing us some of what that all looks like on your end.
Yeah, for sure. Let me share my screen real quick. Sorry. Okay, so this is SendGrid, the back end, and once you're in the back end of SendGrid, it's going to show you some pretty robust data. This is going to be overall this is a month of data, and this is overall what we're looking at. So spam reports are terrible. If you're getting spam, then you got something really wrong. In the past month, we've had 2 people out of it looks like 82,000 delivered. 2 people spammed us, so that's not a big deal at all. You can see the reputation right down here, 99%. So that's obviously pretty important. And then you can see that we've been sending messages weekly. So these are weekly COVID updates we don't technically call them that, but that's effectively what they are. And you can go into, well, let me talk about the high level first. So we had 97,000 requests, 85% were delivered, 130% opened. So that's, obviously unique opens, you can't go over 100%, which I'll show in a second. And then we don't really, like, passively, we want people to click whenever they're interested. 8% are clicking, and then we had 0.24% bounces. So this shows me that my email list is pretty good. If we had high bounces, then that would mean that, we have a bunch of bad emails. And then if we had a lot of people spamming us, that would also not be very good. You can go into each campaign. You can just cross-reference with Follow Up Boss to see what that. Hold on, sorry, let me dismiss this. To see what that looks like. So this is campaign on the 23rd of April. Shows you how many are delivered. Unique opens, which is really interesting, and they're giving us a percentage there. Clicks, unique clicks. So you can go in and say, okay, well, this is all really compelling. Why did we get 27,000 opens on this one versus 16,000 opens on that one? And you can look at it and you can analyze your own content and say, okay, well, clearly whatever it was we sent on the 27th resonated. We should do more like that, right? You can go to statistics and look at your overview of stats. This is where you're going to see unique opens. So obviously fun to brag that we had 130% of open rates, but it looks like 1 in 3 people that we're sending these to are actually opening them. So that means that 2 out of 3, they're just sitting in their inbox and they're never doing anything with them, which is fine. But you can look at these also again and look at them individually and say, okay, well, on the 23rd, we had 5,736 unique opens. And then on the 27th, we had 8,357 unique opens. So what's different? That one obviously had a lot more unique opens. So we should look back at that one and maybe do more of what that one had than these others. If I go, I don't know if you want me to go super far back, but if I would go back pre-COVID, I could show you what the old monthly reports look like.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good comparison.
Yeah, for sure. I can tell you they're not going to be nearly as good because things just weren't as interesting,
Because
right?
people were working and doing other stuff.
They weren't worried, right? So yeah, so we were sending a lot less at that point in time. Unique opens. Oh, you know what this was actually? Uh, our email list was a lot cleaner. So you can see how many requests we had. So we had, instead of having 15,000 delivered, we had 4,700 delivered. And that's why the unique open rate was so high on this. Whenever we started sending these out, let me find whenever we got to COVID and figure out whenever we first sent them. Okay, 1 second. Okay, so here is whenever COVID hit, right? So that's the 20th. That was the first like COVID specific email that we sent. And that was when we had feedback from people that, hey, that was really good. We enjoyed reading that. And you can see that we had 2,500 unique opens out of 6,500 delivered. So that's, 40% or whatever that is. Then go to April 2nd, we're still not sending a ton, 7,100 opens. I'm sorry, 7,100 sorry about this. 5,600 delivered, unique opens at 2,300. And then, I got kind of motivated and said, oh, wow, people say this content's good. So then we had 16,000 delivered on this next one on April 10th. And that's whenever we really opened up the gates quite a bit. Whenever we went back to a lot of old email addresses that in the past we just weren't sending to, we wanted to open it up more and say, okay, well, will these people enjoy the content? They didn't enjoy the content quite as much as that really tight, good email list of 6,000. But they still enjoyed it enough that they're not spamming us, and that they're still opening it at a decent rate in the 30s somewhere. So
yeah, that's great. I was going to ask you that how the delivered went up so much. So can you speak a little bit, just high level, to that segment? Like, was it opt-in before, and then you just hit the whole database? Like, what was the difference?
Yeah. So whenever I've been with Follow Up Boss forever, and I think whenever I first signed up with Follow Up Boss, I have call it 20,000 people in my contacts. And so I believe what happened, and this was years ago, I uploaded my entire contact list, and then I went back and trashed everybody because it was like friends from college, stuff like that. And then there were some good people in there, but I just didn't want to monkey with it. And so I just trashed everybody except for, call it at the time, the 25 prospects that I was actually working with. And so then whenever this happened, I thought, oh, well, there's probably some good in there. So I went and untrashed them all. And it was pretty interesting. We ended up with a lot of things that were in the trash, like that I'd untrashed, like automatic, support requests and things like that. And I had to get creative and search for those and delete them again. But it's also been good. I mean, there were, I literally 10 minutes before this call, an old friend from college who doesn't live in Austin, so he'll probably never send me any business, but he replied to the email and made a funny joke and was like, hey man, it's good to hear from you. Another old friend from college a month ago emailed me and said, don't take me off the list, I live in Florida but I'm still interested in Austin. And it's good for those people to, if they want the content, I mean, it's free to send it, so you might as well send it to them. But that's how that all happened. Sorry for the long story.
No, that's great. I love that. I think, obviously everybody wants just to get leads, but I think by the same token, you gotta nurture your people. You can't, if we could just isolate the 4 people who are going to transact, then we'd send 4 emails, right? Like
exactly. Yeah.
we know how we want it to work. We also live in the real world. For somebody who would potentially, and I have another quick poll I want to get to in a second, to see what other people are doing. If you were going to send other types of emails, like if you're going to send 3 different types of emails, like what would those be? I mean, we covered the newsletter type thing. I mean, do you do any property specific, like new listing, or do you recommend any of that for other people?
Yeah. So you need to, we do that, but we let the MLS handle that. So part of our system is as soon as we've connected with somebody, we're going to set them up on property searches, and you can do that through, Matrix, whatever system your MLS uses. You can do that through your IDX provider, whatever that might be. But people really like getting, properties in their email, and they don't tend to get upset if they get the same properties from multiple sources. So if they're getting emails from you showing a property and they're also getting one from Zillow or Redfin or whatever, no big deal. You should absolutely have that going. That's a no-brainer. And then what you mentioned earlier, Lee, where if you're driving them back to your own website, Follow Up Boss's Pixel is going to track that, and they're going to see when people are hitting the site, so you're going to know who's engaged. So those are super important, and you have to have those going out. If you're not, if that's not part of your process, implement that I mean, today. We always tell our agents, like, first phone conversation needs to be, what can I do to set you up on searches? It's very rare that somebody doesn't want to be on searches. The only client type that I've worked with that legitimately didn't want to be on searches are like I won't even say luxury, like the super luxury people. Like,
Yeah.
luxury in Austin's like 1.5 million plus. These are the folks that are buying like 5 million plus. Yeah, they don't want to get spammed with email. You need to call them whenever you have something new.
And there's not a
But
bunch of new properties. There's not, oh, a new property tomorrow, you know?
right, for sure. But the bread and butter, the median priced homes, like, they need to know the minute or the day whenever it hits. And so your first conversation with them over email or over phone needs to be, I'm going to set searches up for you. How would you like to receive those? Would you like to receive those immediately, or would you like to receive those every morning or once a week? So then that's working for you. It's something you never have to do again. Then you need to have a follow-up after you've set up and I could have a whole another conversation about how to set those searches up, by the way. But then after that, you need to have another follow-up. The first follow-up needs to be, what did you think of the searches? So you set the searches up for them on Monday. Tuesday, you email them or call them or text them, however you communicate. What did you think of the searches? Is there anything that I can do to improve those? Why are you reaching out? You're reaching out because you're trying to add value. You're trying to help them. Were there any properties in there that didn't fit? I'd like to try to, hone this down some so that you're not receiving junk. I'm actually looking for an investment property right now in another market. And I got on the phone with that agent to teach him how to exclude the properties he was sending to me that I didn't want. I mean, I didn't think I was being condescending. Hopefully I wasn't. But we went in and we excluded the property searches that didn't work. So that's a good follow-up. Like, how's it going? What can I do to make this, what can I do to make this better? Then after that, it's just simply following up with them. So I guess to answer your question, newsletters, property searches, active follow-up searches. And that needs to be, the active follow-up searches can be templated, but they need to also have personal information in them. They need to look like they're not sent from a robot. Unfortunately, there's not a drip campaign in the world that is going to allow you to sit back and do nothing and not actively send personalized emails. So those emails need to be personalized.
Yeah, I think that's a real key point. I would almost go as far as to say, call that follow-up on your follow-up. It's like,
right.
People want it to be magic, set it and forget it. But I think the people that really win are the ones that do actually follow up and say, and if somebody wants a blend of that, here's kind of a pro tip that I do is I try, even if it is a little bit of a blast or a template that I'm using, I at least try to add in some sort of like happy Friday or good morning or something that just makes it, makes it really definitively like, this is not a canned email,
Here's one. Yeah. So here's one that I use, and I'm in Gmail whenever I send this one a lot. That's why it's not in Follow-Up Boss. But so we follow up with all of our closings to see what they thought of the transaction. Most 99% of the time they're glowing and they loved working with us. But you can see, I send the same email a million times,
right?
But I want to make sure that I put the agent's name there. So I just put in, agent name, and then I put a bunch of brackets around it so I don't forget to personalize that. So you can put templates in there, and there are some templates we have that literally in big brackets say enter personal info here, right? So that you remember to put your personal information in there. I will, me, Lee, I'm not going to stop this. I'm not going to get through this call without going like super tangential and high level.
That's great.
As soon as there is a drip campaign that will allow you to sit back and do nothing, you're out of a job because the robots won and AI is now doing your job. So your job as a salesperson is to follow up and make sure that you're providing good service. So
yeah, I'm really glad you said that. I totally agree. I couldn't possibly agree more. I'm going to do another quick poll just on some of the different things that people are focused on for their marketing. I know we've been focused on email and I want to stay focused on email, but what else do you do, Eric? I mean, do you do like what kind of social stuff do you guys do? Do you do handwritten stuff? Like what else do you do?
Yeah, we do a ton. So we do, we do SOI stuff. We do email campaigns. I'll show you a report real quick. And I'm going to, me, man, I'm pretty coy about all of our marketing, but I'll zip through it real quick just so you can kind of see how many different sources we have. But we have right here. So here's the different lead sources: sphere of influence, organic, paid, agent generated, realtor.com. These are all the different lead sources we have, and these are all the different lead sources we track. And you can see that this one right here, sphere of influence, is obviously going to be, it's always going to be your largest chunk of the pie. Because that's the case.
And the least expensive to market too, right?
It absolutely is. We have a really systematic, what we call sphere of influence marketing campaign, where we systematically send, stuff on their birthday. We systematically send handwritten cards that actually a robot writes on their home anniversary purchase. We're sending them market reports from Altos every month. We're sending them newsletters right now every week, but generally every month. So we have that very systemized, and we have that in such a way that the agents, whenever they close, they're automatically plugged into that sphere of influence marketing campaign. We don't want our agents to have to worry about it. If you're an individual agent, you need to do it. Like, you need to figure out how that's going to get done. I will say this, it's hard. I mean, I've done this for 17 years now, and it's something, this SOI campaign that we put together, we just put it together and launched it Jan 1 of this year. And it's something that I've known for 17 years needs to be done.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to go back to my database previous 2014. So I probably have, 1,000 closings that I just left money on the table. So if you're, starting out and you do it from day one, you're not going to leave that money on the table.
Yeah, that's great. It looks like, so our poll is in, it looks like 57% email newsletter. So that's solid. 35 email drips, 30 handwritten card, 30% handwritten cards, but overwhelming majority Facebook being 78%. I'd love to dive deeper into some of those specifics.
I would say that, the Facebook stuff, I'd love to hear what measurable results. I'm real skeptical of Facebook. I know people are successful doing it. We've tried the heck out of it, and we've had a really hard time with it to get anything measurable out of it.
Yeah. I mean, again, what are we measuring? Are we measuring email addresses that may or may not be real, or are we measuring, closings or somewhere in the middle? Or is it your sphere people on just using Facebook as a drip, or is it a paid ad? There's 100
for sure
things.
Facebook's great. By the way, for sphere stuff, Facebook's phenomenal. Like, when you are able to share stuff with your sphere and not be annoying, like that's fantastic. So
right. And especially now, because everybody's on it 22 hours a day.
25/8. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. 25/8. So no, that's really good stats. I love to see that from other people, and we have a couple of questions. I'd love to, if people have questions, drop them in the Q&A. This is a great opportunity to ask Eric specific questions about sorry, I just realized I didn't share the poll. I was just reading it, so I'll pull that up real quick. But great opportunity to ask you questions. And Megan, if you want to come on, if you have any specific questions or. You're muted, Megan, sorry.
I do that every time.
And I just muted Eric on accident. Sorry, you're back.
Thanks for that. So one question we have here is, how are you marketing to participants to join your mailing list? Which I think is a good one here.
Yeah. So that's not something that we have historically done, because we've always focused on low funnel stuff, but we actually are doing it right now. We are marketing how is COVID affecting the real estate market, and people are joining at about $2 an email right now. So I don't know how valuable that's going to be. I've noticed that there's a decent number of real estate agents that I'm paying $2 per email address to get to our newsletter, but we have the content written, and we have the COVID section on our website to drive them to. So I felt like, okay, the content's the hard part. Let's try it out. By the way, nuts and bolts on that, which I usually don't share nuts and bolts, but that's just Facebook lead ads is what we're doing with that one. So,
I mean, maybe that's a recruiting strategy in the end, right? Like, who knows?
It probably is. Yeah.
So here's another question. You mentioned a robot handwrites your cards. What company do you use for that?
Handwritten with a Y, HANDWRYTETEN, handwritten.
I'll share that in my follow-up email as well.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. So, a lot of people said they're sending newsletters, which is great. But I've seen a lot of newsletters over time, working at Follow Up Boss with teams, and some are awesome. And other ones are like, like check the box, I'm sending a newsletter. So I'd love to hear any tips you have about like newsletter content and making sure that it's really specific to your market and has a flavor to it.
Sure. So I always have to stop myself from being overly negative. So I'll say that to start. And I love to give examples of how not to do things to explain how to do things. So I completely reject the idea that your email newsletter, that the goal should be, I just want to get in front of my people once a month. That's a really bad goal, in my opinion. Your goal should be that you want to position yourself as the expert in your field. And your field is probably the city name real estate expert. That's what you want to position yourself as. So if you look at the content that you're putting together and you read it and you say, if I were somebody that barely knew me, and if I thought this was a smart person who was speaking intelligently and giving specific insight into that subject, it's probably something you should send. It doesn't mean that you have to, you know, write a novel or write a dissertation on it or something like that. It just means that you need to have unique insight. You need to present statistics, and you need to interpret those statistics. To go to a negative town again, there's a company that's local to Austin that was offering up newsletters as a service, and they called me constantly, and they're a national startup. And I'd say, yeah, send me the content, let me see it. And the content it was things like, you know, how to make sure your garden grows well in the spring. I'm not going to send that to my database. I will pay money to have that not sent to my database. And I would tell them, I'd say, guys, look, as soon as you start getting market specific content, I'd love to see it and I might consider it. But until that happens, no, I'm not going to send this out. So don't send that. Don't send how to organize your closet. Don't send, don't forget to change your clock. Everybody's phones changes their clock for them. Like it's bad content. Who cares? Send stuff out that is unique to your market. About the thinnest content that I'll send out that I think is valuable is stuff from Altos. I like it. The Altos data is good, but it doesn't have interpretation of that content. But Altos, if you want to see, like, if you want something to like just set and forget, go look at Altos. That's not a plug for them. I don't get a commission from them or anything like that. But also bear in mind that I'm saying that is absolutely the lowest level content that I'll send out to my own sphere. But we have kind of a high bar. So.
Yeah, I think that's so helpful. And what you keep saying too is like, know your market, like know who you are sending those emails to, because it's different. Right. You know, a lot of people are looking for this, like, how can I set up a 12-month, you know, newsletter campaign? And a lot of times, you know, we're saying back to people like, well, you know, if you schedule that 12 months in advance, you're likely sending something super out of date that's not relevant at all. Like,
what if you schedule 12 months of content for 2020 in January?
Oh man.
What would that look like?
Right? Exactly. And so it's like, spend the time, you know, to actually do this and get results from it. So, all right. What is your opinion on video in newsletters?
I don't like it, but I don't like the way I look on video. So, you know, I'm probably wrong. We've tested a bunch of landing pages that have video against landing pages that don't have video, and they generally test about the same. We don't see, you know, the bounce rate doesn't go down dramatically whenever you have video or anything like that. So that tells me that I'm not being silly by not including video, but it's probably fine. I will say this, I see a lot of really poorly done video, and just make sure that you be proud of it. If there's an echo, don't send it out. If the backdrop looks like my backdrop, where it's just like, you know, some cars driving by, that's probably not the right thing. That's probably not the right thing to send out. Spend some time on it. Make it look like it was not professionally produced, but make it look like, you know, make it look like you care. Sound quality is super important with that stuff. So.
Yeah, I think our friend Albert Vasquez actually just posted something on Facebook the other day about like how to record a high quality video. Another tip I have is just don't, a lot of people just like will insert a bomb video, no text. Like it looks like spam, you know, like why should somebody click this video and spend the 30 seconds, 60 seconds to watch it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, my college friends, like there's not a chance in hell I'm going to click on that video. So, you know, it's yeah, no, you need to tell them why they want to click on it, what the content is. Yeah, I agree with you. Know your market. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like okay, here's a really good piece of advice to anybody. Understand how to speak intelligently about inventory, right? Inventory is not units on market. Inventory is a function of the units that are on the market and the absorption rate. Know how to calculate that, know how to talk about it. When somebody asks you, what's the market like, you know, be able to say something beyond, it's good. be able to talk to them about days on market, be able to talk to them about months of inventory, know how to calculate that, know how to explain what that means. That's a great place to start. It's really interesting too. You don't have to be a math nerd to really understand it. You guys are welcome to email me and I'll send you, we have 2 landing pages on our website. One that talks about seasonality of the market, where we have 10 years of data that crunches why it's a better time to list your house in March than it is in November. We have another one that literally steps you through how to calculate inventory. I'd be happy to send those links to anybody that wants to see them. So.
Like super helpful. I'm sure everybody would love that. So another question here is, when you send your batch emails, do you send on behalf of the agents on your team, or do you send as a company?
On behalf, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, Paige will share that link as well. Cool. I have a question that I did not prep you for, so I'm really gonna catch you here. I guess, and this could go in a bunch of different directions, but I'm all about like good emails, and I loved your point about not having sort of these flowery, I don't remember what you called it, but like highly stylized emails, because we get so many of them and it's just like, marketing, marketing, marketing. So is there any kind of subject line or type of subject line or anything that, like, any recommendations you have there? Because we get that question a lot.
Yeah, sure. The longer the subject line, the higher chance that it's a BS marketing email. So short and to the point.
Awesome. I hope everybody takes that one away. And also, like, and I'd say, like, have it be about what you're writing about, also, so that it's not like, you don't want to do one of those gotcha, somebody opens the email and they're like, oh, thanks, because we get a lot of those too. And is there any, I don't know, like, do you receive any emails, or does anything stick out to you other than being the sender, like being the receiver of emails? You're like, oh, that was a good email. Like, what is it about it that makes you think that?
Okay, cool. I'll go off on a big long tangent. The shorter, the better on email too. Whenever you're writing for the web or for really anything, people like bold, literally stylized bold, and they like bullet points. People don't generally read a whole lot. Think about how many opinions have you formed by reading a headline and then regurgitated that information, right? I've told people, I'm like, oh, yeah, I read this. Oh, wait, sorry, I just read the headline. I actually didn't read the article, right? So people try to consume a lot of information very quickly. When I went to college, I remember I had a writing professor that introduced us to the concept of, okay, great, that's too long. Well, whenever you're in high school and you're writing papers, you're trying to fluff, use big font, you're required to write a 4-page or whatever. And, probably 90% of that was just garbage. And then this professor was really great. And she explained to me that, okay, if you have a 12-page paper, it really should be 8. So if you are going back and you're editing your stuff, which you probably should at least once for grammatical errors, go back and see if you can make it shorter. And if you can make it shorter and still get the point across, you did a good job. See if you're using bullet points. See if you're, if you're using bullet points, it's probably good. If there's a way that you can separate it into different subjects that are in bold, probably good. I haven't measured this, so I don't know definitively, but anecdotally, we tend to get more responses, people saying, hey, good job, whenever we've literally just regurgitated a question and answer. The one we sent today was a question and answer session that we went to on Monday, and it worked really well because the question was something that somebody was interested in. And then whenever you're processing that information as the reader, oh, hey, that's a question I want to know the answer to. And then you read it. Questions in bold, answers not in bold. I probably just talked way too fast and probably said too many things, but those are some hints on how to write good emails.
Oh, I think that was awesome, actually, and probably a great, a great place to end. Lee, I'll let you wrap this up.
No, that's great, Eric. We really appreciate all the good info, and I dropped a link to your site in the chat, so if people want to check that out. The majority of all that's there, and obviously they can connect with you from there.
Let me real quickly. I'm going to send the one that I specifically said, the understanding the market. I'm going to send those real quick.
Drop that there, and then Megan can send it out with the recording too.
Perfect. I'll send those over in just a second. So they're harder to find. But.
Okay. Yeah, if you just want to send those to me and or to her, then we'll get those out with the recording.
That sounds great, man.
Cool, man. Appreciate you being on, and always a blast to catch up.
Absolutely. Great seeing you guys. Thanks very
Thanks
much.
so much, Eric.
All right. We'll see y'all. Take care.